I think for us, being a ship operator within Africa, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of infrastructure, which is posing as a challenge. This because there is no much investment in infrastructure, ports infrastructure. The second challenge is policy, because there are different regulatory policies across Africa, which is really, we believe it should be harmonized in order to have one policy that fits all the countries. Thirdly is the immigration policy, which is very difficult in Africa, where a lot of countries in Africa, before you go there, you have to go through visa process, which makes it takes so long, and we don't see how it will not, it doesn't enable trade easily. So I believe those policies should be looked at, and if within Africa, for Africans, we should be able to move easily between our countries.
Right, and in your opinion, how do you think we can actually modernize operations? Because it would seem like some of the African countries are still a little bit backward. So how do we modernize these operations?
I think majorly in terms of infrastructure, what we need is capital and investment, and we should allow for create a business environment where capital can be easily accessed, and then so that private investors can be able to invest in this infrastructure. So I believe in order for us to be able to achieve all the potential in AFTA, there should be create an enabling business environment so that we can be able to access capital, and people or entrepreneurs who want to invest in port infrastructures and logistic infrastructures can be able to do it easily.
Right, and you rightly spoke about AFTA, and this is, some people would say that we don't really have, there's nothing happening when it comes to actually making sure that free trade is achieved. What's your opinion or your take on this?
I think AFTA has, yes, you are correct to say it has not achieved 100% what it's supposed to do. But I think it's a work in progress. I believe that for AFTA to achieve this 100%, there should be a lot of policy changes that need to happen within our continent, and there should be this immigration policy change, and there should be a business environment that creates allow for capital to flow in, and this is what is more important, because if we don't have all this, there is no way we can have the industries we want to have, because today we are just importer. We are an importing continent. So it's what goes out of our country. Our continent is raw materials, and we import finished goods. So if we want to make sure that our production industries work, then we need to be able to create a business environment for capital inflow to come in. I think African Unlock has been a platform. The forum has enabled a lot of us entrepreneurs in Africa, first of all, to meet, to know each other, and to be able to sit down in a place, an environment where we discuss on how do we partner together. I thank Standard Bank for creating this event and this platform, because it's really, for myself, this is the second year I'm here, and between the last year and now, I have come across a lot of entrepreneurs who have even gone into partnerships. We are discussing joint venture partnerships, how we can grow our businesses together. So it is great. This forum is really great, and I wish they can do more and more of this. So I don't think it's rhetoric, but I think it also gives us insight in many studies that we don't know about, how we can navigate some of these challenges. So I don't think it's not wasted. I think it's great, and we need more of this actually.
Thank you. Right, so can you introduce yourself and just tell us what you do?
My name is Andrew Mashanda. I'm the head of business and commercial banking for our Africa regions markets. That's all the markets outside of South Africa and offshore, which are the three island economies that we have in our portfolio: Mauritius, Isle of Man, and Jersey.
All right, Mr. Andrew, can you tell us how you think that the current, the trade wars happening around the world, how do you think is impacting African economies?
I think the trade wars that are taking place across the globe have forced Africa to look inwardly and reflect very deeply on the rich human resource that we have, the mineral resource we have, the arable land that we have. How do we leverage these resources to create economies that are independent, firstly, strong structures, strong governance processes, but also interdependent at regional level? And that requires us to start thinking about the tariffs that we have in place amongst ourselves. It also helps us think through the non-tariff barriers that we have to trade, which speaks to the documentation requirements for moving goods across the continent, and also the requirements that you have just to get goods approved for use or for consumption in other markets. So we do need to formalize a lot of this trade. We do know that in the informal sector, goods and services are moving across borders. But I think there's an opportunity for us to formalize it, create the regulatory infrastructure and processes that allow for the regular and the free flow of goods and services across the continent. So the global trade wars do give us an opportunity to reflect very deeply and look at what we are capable of doing for ourselves, by ourselves.
Right, and then in this case, what would you say are some of the key industries that are more vulnerable to some of these issues, and how do we then get out of it?
I think what we've seen, particularly in the manufacturing sector, we've seen quite a bit of pressure, particularly if you look at South Africa, South African wines, and the manufacturers of those wines are indeed looking at what the impact of these trade tariffs are. We've also seen some manufacturers of components that are used in vehicle manufacture out of South Africa into the US, and the impact of that. The textile industry in Lesotho is also impacted by this. So we are looking at how we can support them as they transition, through these trade wars that are taking place globally. Yeah.
And are we actually strategically positioning ourselves for success within all of this?
I think it starts off with our statement of purpose. Africa is our home. We drive her growth. So us, as well as an organization which is well invested on the continent, have always positioned ourselves to support our clients as they go through the different transitions that take place on the continent. And we do believe that this particular situation that we find ourselves in with the global trade wars creates an opportunity for us to become even more relevant to our clients in terms of their investment strategies as they pivot their strategies to become more relevant to a more interdependent African economy.
Right, and how can then the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, how can we actually serve as a buffer for global disruptions like this?
I think if you look at the ambitions we have with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're talking of an uplift in terms of GDP across African markets of about $450 billion by 2035. We're talking of about 100 million people being lifted out of poverty. We're talking about 30 million people being lifted out of extreme poverty over that same period. We're talking of an average growth in terms of GDP across the continent of over 7%. So what you're looking at is a growth in the productive capacity that impacts unemployment, so we can start actually creating more jobs for our people, lifting more people out of poverty, and actually looking at how we can make our continent more prosperous. I think the fantastic thing about the delegates you find at Africa Unlocked, including ourselves as a Standard Bank, is we've not brought people that are into the business of talking. We've brought people that are in the business of doing, the people that are actually driving transformation and change across the continent. These entrepreneurs and business people are businesses that have proven to be very resilient, even in some of the most adverse cycles we've gone through, whether it's droughts, it's wars. These are businesses with a demonstrated track record of dealing successfully on our continent, and we ourselves have demonstrated that we are a partner for the long term for these businesses going forward. So this conference is not about rhetoric, it's not about speeches, it's not about white papers or brown papers. It's about making progress real, and that's what we do as a Standard Bank.
Thank you very much. This is still Africa Unlocked 2025, and I'm here at the Novell Foundation here in Cape Town, and we're focusing on businesses shaping Africa's tomorrow. And I'm here with Florence Wanja. She is
I'm the regional head, East Africa, Business and Commercial Banking.
Right. Talk to us about family-owned businesses and banking and all of that. How would you say is what's the best way for family-owned businesses to actually transition with all of the putting everything in place that other corporate organizations put in place, and making sure that even family-owned businesses also follow through this line to be more successful?
Great. Thank you for the question. I think one of the facts that we need to realize is that 70% of the businesses that are run on the continent are family-owned businesses, meaning that this economy is being driven by businesses that are basically owned by entrepreneurs. And if you're going to realize the full potential of the opportunity, then these family-owned businesses need to be able to outlive the owner. And that's where the issue of transition comes in quite handy. So these businesses are basically driving the economies of sub-Saharan Africa. They're the ones who are driving, education sector, the health sector, manufacturing, agribusiness, which are really core to the economies that we operate in. And if you're going to then realize that growth, it's important that the owners of the vision are able to pass what they're currently doing to the next generation. And I think for me, the importance of corporate governance comes in quite handy, because corporate governance will give you the structures that then enable these organizations to run beyond the visionary, beyond the owner, and for these businesses to then be able to run professionally so that then they can actually outlive the vision of the business owner as we see it.
Yeah, and that brings me to the question on how we then move from, personality-led businesses
Yes.
to actually make them institutionally led businesses.
Yeah.
How do we get there?
Yeah, I think we've come a long way, I must say. And I'll speak in context, especially from East Africa. East Africa, again, I would say the same data follows. About 70% of the businesses that we're seeing are run by family-owned businesses. And we saw and have seen and continue to see a transition of corporate businesses. A large number of corporate, global corporates have basically left the continent and mostly maybe focusing on distribution, and they are leaving some of the manufacturing lines into the hands of family-owned businesses. So the businesses then that are running in some of these regions, we've seen them now transition into second and third generation. And I think they're very good examples of such businesses. And many people are seeing the opportunity and the potential that there is. And a lot of these businesses then are becoming like role models to actually be able to see that if you run your business in a corporatized way, then you are able to scale, you're able to tap into the opportunity, and you're able to also grow regionally. So most of these businesses have moved from just, running in one country into regions, and a number of them as well are looking at even going beyond some of the, regional blocks that we see. So if you look at the potential and you see what some of the big players are doing, the big winners, then I guess everybody else can see the importance of why it needs to transition from the personality into a corporate structure, so that then you have that ability to be able to sustain and scale these businesses to tap into the opportunities.
One of the biggest problems that we see is the internal conflict that family businesses face.
Yeah.
So how then do we make sure that there's good governance and reducing all of that internal conflict?
Yeah. Again, as I said, we have matured as a continent, and we're seeing many family-owned businesses starting to bring their children, their wives or husbands into the businesses very early. And that also is a big way of just ensuring that there's less conflict with time. And we are also seeing institutions like ourselves as well working very hand in hand with these businesses to support in that transition. So we do offer programs that actually provide these business owners with the knowledge to know what they need to do, when they need to do it, and why it's important that they do it. To the extent that we also do offer programs as well for children, even as early as 15 years, where we take them through the importance of them acquiring certain skills, so that by the time they are transitioning into adulthood, they are well equipped to be able to appreciate and understand what needs to be done and how they need to plug into the family businesses and to be able to continue with the operations. Again, I must emphasize that it's also important to also be able to bring in professionals. So as a family business, you need to also be able to establish what are the gaps that you have in your management team, because you can bring in a very strong management team, and that also is one of the pillars that are critical for transition. So the business doesn't have to be run by the family members, but it's to see what roles can the family members play and what roles can professionals actually also play, so that you then have a very well blended team to be able to run these businesses.
Right. And speaking of running these businesses, my final question will be: how do founders make sure that they prepare, the next generation to inherit not just the wealth, but also to steward it wisely?
I think, as I said, there is a lot of support coming in. A number of the big fours now have a big focus around supporting family-owned businesses. So there is, you can tap into the consultancy services that are there. As I said, as a bank as well, we do also provide that advisory service to some of these business owners. So there is a lot of awareness that is there in the market to just be able to support these businesses, so that and the founders, so that they're able then to to upscale family members and to be able to bring in the right people in the businesses, and more importantly, it's also to just have the knowledge that you can't be fully capacitated to run these businesses, especially if you want to run them at scale. So the importance of being able to tap into other resources, into other professionals, to be able to support you along the journey, so that then you're able to get this business to actually outlive you as a founder, and for you to be able also to pass this business to your family members, and more importantly, to be able to leave a legacy.